Good evening, I'm Jose Cardenas. The Arizona Latino Caucus outlines its priorities for the legislative session. You'll hear from caucus leaders and find out how this woman is using anthropology to make a difference in our community. All of this coming up next on Horizonte.
Funding for Horizonte is made possible by contributions by the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station.
Thank you for joining us. The Arizona Latino Caucus outlined its legislative and public policy priorities for this year's session. Joining me to talk about their agenda is Senate Democratic Leader and Arizona Latino Caucus Chair, Senator Ana Tovar. Also here is Arizona Latino Caucus Co-Chair, State Representative Martin Quesada. Thank you both for joining us on Horizonte.
Thank you.
Before we get into the caucus and the priorities, just a little bit about the districts you represent, maybe a brief description of it.
Yes, so I'm District 19, which is out in the West Valley, covers West Phoenix, a portion of Laveen, Tolleson, and Avondale as well.
And Representative Quesada.
I represent District 29, which is also out in the West Valley, covers large parts of Maryvale, Glendale, small part of Litchfield Park.
And both of them heavily Latino districts?
Yes, absolutely. I think Representative Quesada and I's district are ranked as the two top minority districts in the state.
The caucus itself, though, A, you don't have to be Latino to be a member, and B, you don't have to have a heavily Latino district to be a participant as well, right?
Yes, so this year we have 26 members from the Latino caucus, some of them being, as you said, non-Latino. But again, if they're interested in pushing Latino caucus priorities forward, they are welcome to join. Today we just had our first Republican join, TJ Shope. So definitely we are an open caucus that encourages members to participate and definitely move forward our Latino caucus agenda.
And speaking of that agenda, as I understand, this year you announced the priorities in conjunction with the Arizona Hispanic Chamber of Commerce.
Yes, for the first year we had a collaboration of a press release and a press conference with the Arizona Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and we laid out what is our Latino priorities for the state for this upcoming session. So it was great to work hand in hand with the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and laying out our priorities for this next session.
Okay, why don't you just give us a quick rundown, then we're going to come back and go into detail on some of them.
Well, essentially what our priorities are is what all Arizonans want. We want, great health care, education, when it comes to immigration as well, and keeping our children safe. So essentially what our priorities for the Latino caucus are for what every family in the state of Arizona deserves.
And Representative Quesada, I understand that one of the first steps that the caucus has taken in terms of moving towards these priorities is a meeting with the new head of Child Protective Services, or under its new name, Charles Flanagan. Tell us about that.
Yes, the caucus had a meeting with the new director recently because the issues happening with CPS are hugely important, particularly to Latino families. What we learned as part of that meeting and in other research that we've done is that a large number of these uninvestigated cases are taking place in zip codes where there are large Latino populations living. So the result of that is that these are Latino children, Latino families that are being caught up in this mess at CPS.
And what did you hear from Mr. Flanagan that made you feel good, bad about what's going to happen in the future with these families? Well,
there's a lot of effort to fix the problem. I mean, and we're happy to hear that. This is definitely at the top of everyone's radar list right now. So the attention is there, the focus is there, but our concerns are mostly that we need to ensure that the resources are also there, and that the preventative services are there as well to ensure that these families aren't put into this program in the first place.
So, Senators, does that mean insisting on more funding than what the governor has already asked for and obtained from the legislature? Well,
essentially more funding would be a key aspect of it, because we know, as Representative Quesada mentioned, our preventative services were cut to the bare bone in years prior. So we know that is an extreme issue that we need to focus on, and that does require money. And I know for our Latino caucus, the ultimate goal is here for CPS is we have the opportunity to set the reset button for CPS and create a system and an agency that its ultimate goal should be never having kids enter the system. So we have a very strong focus on our preventative service end, along with having a functional CPS system. One thing that we learned from Director Flanagan and the care team was that there was many dysfunctional and many ways that children fell through the crack, and we know that, which was, the 6,000 uninvestigated cases. As Representative Quesada mentioned, many of those were in our minority districts. So again, we're pushing not only for preventative services, but have a very well-run CPS system. And one thing that we're pushing for as well is, making sure that our caseworkers are in those that are in our neighborhoods that affect our communities, and to have the caseworkers be bilingual and be able to relate with our families, because ultimately, the caseworkers and the preventative systems that are in our community really place an emphasis on speaking to the families, helping out the families. So again, that's going to be our major focus in driving and making sure our voice is heard at the table and creating a new CPS system.
So are we talking about legislation that your caucus will be proposing, or are you talking about more oversight and just seeing how things go and reacting to that?
No, I think it's a partnership of being at the table and at the stakeholder table when these new legislation is being proposed. Essentially the cases have been found that over maybe 30 to 40% of them have been minority children. So definitely we have a vested interest in bringing a positive solution to the table.
Representative Quesada, the reform of CPS, so to speak, was a big part of the governor's State of the State address. Were there other aspects of the State of the State address that you care to comment on, whether they're consistent with what the caucus is looking for or not?
In regards to CPS, the big aspect that was missing from the governor's State of the State was the resources that were going to go into that. She talked about the separation of the division from DHS, but there was no talk about the resources that were going to go into the program. Without the talk of the resources, we know that the same problems are still going to occur. There's still the structural deficiencies of the program are still going to exist, and the same problems are still going to happen to the children and the families that are caught in the system. There was also, like we said, the lack of mention of the preventative service and the restoration of those services. Without that, again, these families are going to get caught up in that system again.
Well, what about the emergency funding, though, that was approved, just last week?
The emergency funding helps. I mean, it's a drop in the bucket, but it's something that helps. I mean, it's obviously something that we all voted on. It was a very bipartisan effort to get this through. We understood the need for this extra funding, but it doesn't solve the entire problem. There's still a lot more that is needed.
Senator, any concerns about the governor's State of the State?
Well, I think one issue in particular was education, and I know she had an emphasis of having a performance assessment piece to the student achievement portion. I know that is something that is from the Latino Caucus perspective. We want to make sure that our funding is going to our most vulnerable children and making sure that they are well funded. So we haven't seen the numbers yet on her proposal and the data, and the data is really important in making sure that our most vulnerable children are taken care of and are not essentially, held behind in this new piece that she's pushing forward for performance achievement as well.
And speaking of education, I understand the second meeting of the caucus involved teacher education.
Yes, absolutely. That for us is a big issue. As you know, we passed a bipartisan budget last year that addressed the issue of education. But we're coming off, since 2008, a nearly $3 billion cut to education. So what we did last year was a step in the right direction, but again, it was a drop in the bucket on education investment. Working hand in hand not only with the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, but investing in our children and knowing that we have new standards that are coming into play. We need to have the correct amount of resources for our teacher preparation and having a true investment in our educational and our public educational system. Because essentially what we want is we want to have a workforce that is ready for our 21st century, but that's going to require a true investment in our public education system.
Representative Quesada, I understand the third meeting of the caucus involved transportation. That was the subject, and you met with Supervisor Wilcox from Maricopa County and also with a supervisor from Coconino County.
Yes, and the supervisors that met with us described the lack of HERF funding in the governor's budget. This is something that is desperately needed, and actually both parties at the legislature agree on the need for that HERF funding. That's funding that's going to allow for the roads to be properly serviced and properly maintained. That's hugely important, especially in our southern part of Arizona, where we're dealing with with commerce with Mexico. In order to continue that commerce, in order to continue continue to keep business strong, we need to have functioning and drivable roads. That HERF funding is going to get us there.
Let's talk about some of the hot issues in the legislature. One that's received a lot of attention lately is House Bill 2305. First, explain what that's all about and what the concerns are.
House Bill 2305 was the bill that was passed literally in the middle of the night last year that enacted several restrictive measures on our voting statutes. Removing people from the permanent early voting list, criminalizing voter engagement efforts to help people collect ballots. It was a Christmas tree bill that included many measures. Democrats opposed this bill. The Latino caucus opposed this bill throughout the session last year because of its effect on get out the vote efforts, particularly in the Latino neighborhoods. Our community responded to the passage of that bill by referring House Bill 2305 to the ballot. Now, what Republicans are trying to do in the House, it's been one of the bigger issues. They're trying to repeal House Bill 2305 from last year. What that would do is that would essentially cancel the referendum election that's supposed to take place
And
this
why
November.
is that a bad thing?
That's a bad thing for one particular reason, because we don't trust that they are not going to then turn right around and reenact those exact same measures, which would force us to go back and re-refer them to the ballot. There have been statements made by several Republican legislators that said they absolutely intend to introduce those bills.
Though the principal sponsor, Representative Farnsworth, says that's not going to happen.
Well, actually, Representative Farnsworth, he didn't make that promise. He didn't go so far as to say it wouldn't happen. He said that he himself had no intention of doing that, but that he couldn't stop other members from doing that. And he said that there were issues that were contained in House Bill 2305 that still needed to be addressed.
And as I understand it, the concern is if they break it up into separate pieces, then you would need 6 or 7 referenda to deal with it.
6 or 7 referenda, 6 or 7 sets of hundreds of thousands of signatures that need to be collected and submitted, and 6 times the amount of money that would be needed to raise to get this accomplished.
So what's the likelihood, as I understand it, that's cleared the House?
It has passed the House Judiciary Committee. It's waiting a vote by the full House, but an identical measure is also moving its way through the Senate, and it's about to be heard in the Judiciary Committee on Monday.
And what are the prospects there, Senator?
Well, it's like Representative Martin Quesada said. This notion of repealing a bill that is a voter suppression bill is an absolute tragedy, and it's a slap in the face to the voters. It tells the voters that the legislature knows best, and we all know that this bill puts up barriers for our minority community and for our seniors as well. So this is a real threat to Arizona voters, and Arizona voters should be furious at the fact that legislators feel that they know what's best for Arizona's voters. That we, as a Latino caucus, demand that the repeal go into effect and allow the voters to vote on this. You know, there was more than enough signatures to get this on the ballot. The voters demanded that this go onto the ballot, and they should have the voice at the voters' box.
Another hot issue, it's been in the press a lot lately, is a bill that the sponsors describe as simply guaranteeing that people have the right to exercise their religious beliefs.
Yes, that's another hot topic issue that is gaining momentum in both the House and the Senate. The Latino caucus the members feel that this is a step in the wrong direction. This bill promotes hate and discrimination not only to our LGBT community, but also within our religious communities as well. So, what was thought of, many years ago when SB 1070 was passed, it was detrimental and such a black eye to our state. And we feel this religion bill is as equally as damaging
So you view
to our
this
state of
as the
Arizona.
SB 1070 of this session?
Oh, absolutely. When it attacks, the civil rights of people based on who they love and based on what religion they believe, it is an absolute tragedy that this is moving forward. We've worked very hard for the state of Arizona to focus on true issues that'll move our state forward, and this bill takes us decades back and takes us in the wrong direction.
Well, we've got a number of weeks ahead of us in the legislative session. I'm sure we'll have you both back to talk about how we're doing, where we're going on these. Thank you so much, though,
Thank
for
you.
joining us this evening.
Thanks for having us.
Tonight, we'll get to know Cassandra Hernandez. Hernandez is an anthropologist and also the Interpretation and Programs Coordinator at the ASU Deer Valley Rock Art Center. We'll talk to Cassandra in a moment, but first, here's a look at Desierto Remix, Performance in the Desert. It was an event where she helped bring internationally renowned performance artists to the ASU Deer Valley Rock Center. Joining me tonight is Cassandra Hernandez, Interpretation and Programs Coordinator at Arizona State University's Deer Valley Rock Center. Cassandra, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
That's a fascinating video. I want to talk a lot about what we saw and what it means to your program. But let's talk first about the Deer Valley Rock Art Center, where that took place.
This is an archaeological site, museum, and 47-acre desert preserve. And it's managed by the Arizona State University School of Human Evolution and Social Change. So this is a very ancient site where for thousands of years, different groups carved petroglyphs on rock. So they left symbols, and we don't know exactly what these mean, but this is a site that was inhabited and was actually used for all kinds of economic activities. And right now it's just a very beautiful kind of urban oasis where we can learn about our past.
And the performance, which we're going to talk about in a moment, was part of a broader project that you're involved in. Tell us about that.
I'm working with Mary Stevens, who's the producing director for ASU Performance in the Borderlands, and we've spent a year and a half creating these large format cultural events where we blend art with scholarship and activism, and we look at building spaces where we can have cultural discussions that have at their center an analysis of power and justice, and looking at the ways that we can bring diverse communities in conversation about political issues and issues of class, gender, citizenship, and ability. And so creating a platform for working the culture to work the politics.
And I should have mentioned before when I asked about the Deer Valley Rock Art Center that we do have a picture of the physical facility, and we'll put it up on the screen now. This is the exhibition space that we're looking at here?
Yeah, that is the exhibition space. So you get to learn about the prehistory of Arizona, and then also about the significance of the site for contemporary peoples, and also about the work involved in understanding sites here in the Southwest, and then particularly petroglyph sites.
Now let's talk about the performance that was there, Desierto Remix, Desert Remix. And what was that all about?
This was quite a phenomenal event. It was an outdoor performance, so we brought an international group, Nemcatacoa Teatro from Colombia, and they are street artists. So they actually do performance on stilts, and so they created this procession through the desert landscape, and it was a meditation on time, on space, looking at how we can use our bodies to understand landscapes and how we can reinvent our identity as contemporary desert peoples. And then we also brought a group from Tucson. So they produced the show together, and they do a multimedia piece. They actually built this giant barrel cactus screen, a 360 screen, and they actually do a spoken word piece with music and with performance where they talk about border identity and sort of the varied histories of Arizona. And it's very political, looking at stories from snowbirds to La Llorona to, you know, the realities of our immigrant communities along the border.
Like Llorona, I mean the
The
traditional
weeping,
Mexican,
yeah.
the weeping woman in Mexican folklore.
Yeah.
Part of what you do is symposia. We've got another picture of one of the events you did called Breaking Boundaries. We'll put it
Yeah.
up on the screen, but tell us about that.
This was a public panel where we brought artists whose work engages with contemporary issues ranging from, you know, hip hop theater to, we had a producer who's working with an indigenous group in Chile, the Mapuche, and they're actually they're creating these traditional textiles into QR codes, and they're actually coding their language and their oral histories into these textiles that are, you know, touring the country in exhibitions. We had people who are working locally in issues of ecology and how, you know, culturally we understand our landscape. And really it was a gesture towards, you know, understanding how art can help us, you know, think how we can be different Phoenicians, you know, how can we use art to get at, you know, social engagement and the way that we think of our city and maybe designing, you know, new conditions for life in Phoenix.
I want to talk about two other events, projects that you had under this bigger umbrella. One is called Exhibiting Ourselves.
Yes, this was a project back in 2009. I was actually a graduate student at the time, but we curated this national symposium that for the first time since the 70s and 80s looked at the state of minority operated museums. So we brought scholars and also museum practitioners from all over the country, from the Smithsonian to also local cultural producers, and took a look at you know, politics of representation in museums, at the history of Latino presence in museums, and then focusing specifically on the state of Latino public culture in Phoenix. At the time, there was a group here that was igniting a movement to open a Latino cultural center that now exists. So we were looking at, you know, discussions about cultural representation and what it means really to represent ourselves or to exhibit ourselves, hence the name. And looking at the politics of cultural representation.
Now you've got another major event coming up, I think this Saturday.
Yes, I'm really excited about this one. It's called Native Now, and it's this Saturday at the Deer Valley Rock Art Center from 10 to 4.
And we've got some information on the screen.
Yeah, and this is a festival of indigenous art and culture. And the idea behind Native Now is to look at the ways that, you know, the mainstream media and mainstream society misrepresents Native cultures. I think we can all think of stereotypes that are pervasive in our culture. Some of them, you know, perhaps a little more innocent. Some of them very damaging. And so the idea was to create a space where we could have, you know, meaningful dialogue and meaningful understanding of what it means to be Native now. We have artists, performers, cultural producers who are engaging, you know, the conversation of what it means to be indigenous in Arizona and to express, you know, a diversity of voices that really takes a stand against these, you know, stereotypes and misrepresentations, and to talk about, you know, the political struggles affecting these communities, you know, looking at issues of sovereignty, looking at issues of education, health, you know, issues affecting Native communities along the border. And so we have, you know, from musical acts to performance to indigenous foods and visual art to engage, you know, this broader understanding of what it means to be Native today.
Oh, it sounds exciting.
Yeah.
Last thing, a little bit outside this project, but something you've had some involvement in. I think a lot of people would be surprised to know that ASU is the lead research institution at the magnificent ruins near Mexico City, Teotihuacan. There's an exhibition going on right now.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
The exhibition is called City Life, Experiencing the World of Teotihuacan.
And we've got a couple of pictures we can flash on.
Yeah, and so it's an exhibition about daily life at the site. Many times, you know, exhibitions represent the life of the elites.
And here's the
Yeah.
pyramids themselves.
I actually took that photo from a balloon. I was lucky enough to fly in one of those.
And then I think we've got one more picture of
Yeah.
something in the exhibition.
And so the idea is to try to reconstruct daily life this is one of the first urban centers in the Americas. So we're talking about a place that, had potentially 100,000 people at its height.
And it
8
was
square
abandoned even
miles.
when the Aztecs arrived in Mexico.
Oh, way before that, yeah.
And so that's still going on. People can go and see it?
People can go and see it. It's going to be up until May, and the museum is open from 11 to 3, and this is the ASU Museum of Anthropology on campus in Tempe.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that information
you.
and the other interesting, magnificent projects you're involved in.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's our show for tonight. From all of us here at 8 and Horizonte, I'm Jose Cardenas. Have a good night.
Funding for Horizonte is made possible by contributions by the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station.